Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. And I woke up this morning to probably a couple thousand, I can't even count them all, a couple thousand comments that got thrown into my spam folder. And I understand that if your comment does not show up when you hit the enter button, that it probably got thrown into the spam folder. And for that reason, it won't be seen by everybody. But understand, I'm not the one deleting your comments. Okay, I think YouTube's doing this to create some kind of chaos, because some people get really upset when their comment doesn't show up and they automatically assume that I'm the one that deleted their comment. I rarely delete comments. The only time I'll delete a comment is if there's an unprovoked or unsubstantiated attack of some kind, or if someone's just saying outright lies or attacking other people on the channel. And usually I'll give that person a couple chances, but I don't just delete people who disagree with me. If you guys go through the comments, you'll see there'll be a lot of comments that might even offend you that you don't disagree with. So understand there's something going on with YouTube. Now, it appears as though this spamming or putting people in spam is focused on certain individuals on the channel that actually post really good comments. And for some reason, their comments, all of their comments going back to the beginning of the channel, have been put in spam. So I've tried to pre-approve those people. One of them is Jenny Lee. You guys have seen her in the comments section. All of her comments going back to the beginning got put into spam. Now, these could be bots that are, being released, that are going through and marking people's comments as spam in different comment sections. But basically what's going on is this is hurting people, okay? Because people want their voice to be heard, and I understand that. And so I don't know what's going on, but we'll try to get to the bottom of it. I tried to approve as many as I could. I've been working feverishly all morning trying to approve all of these comments in the spam folder so that they can be seen, but there's just too many of them. So now I'm glad you guys are here. We got a lot to cover today. We're going to be all over the place, and we're going to have a little bit of fun, but we're also going to talk about some serious topics. I pulled this article up today, and I was shocked because this is unbelievable. Now, this had me troubled because as a black person, I'm tired of being pandered to. I'm tired of the top-down racial triggers. They continue to perpetuate the divide. And so, sometimes I'm shocked that some of my own people don't get what's wrong with a headline like this. They don't understand, okay? Because they've got us believing that we should take what we can get. It's the take what we can get mentality because of this perceived, history, and that somehow that history has affected us in the now, in our individual personal lives. And so they've convinced black people to, even if something's unfair, just take it because you deserve it. And this is self-destructive in so many ways. What if this article said 7 white-owned kitchenware brands? People would be up in arms, wouldn't they? Think about that for a second. Now, I'm talking about this because there is a perception that I don't support my own black community amongst some of my black brothers and sisters. It even makes me cringe to say that because we're all one family. But see, this is how they have us programmed. It's hard to break away from this. But I want to set the record straight because it's articles like this that keep us in bondage. Look at this kitchenware. Pigeonholed products that reinforce the very prejudices that have black people locked in this idea of how the world works. Look at the kinky cup handle representing the hair. Look at the colors. The iron skillet. This screams to me from times of when, the person was in the kitchen, we have to say. These are trigger colors and shapes gold and black, reinforcing. Look at the wooden bowls. This is the most racist thing I've ever seen, coming from the top down, not me to you. Look at these. Look at this, like the old farmer out in the fields with the denim and the copper, of course, the browns. And my last name is Brown, probably as a result of prejudices from my ancestry. You know, I do have slaves in my ancestry. And when they were emancipated, they took on names, new names, because they didn't have names when they came from Africa. And so a lot of these names, like Washington and Brown, they were reflective of the times. And some of the names even had people still in bondage mentally. So here we are hundreds of years later, and we're still reinforcing these old attitudes and prejudices. I mean, this is crazy. Look at the names even. Caribe, Goody, like slang. So this is offensive to me as a black person, okay? And it has nothing to do with me believing that there's, every white person around the corner doesn't like me, because that's not the truth. That's what they want you to believe. You know, as if all of these colors and shapes are what black people really like. Why don't they have reds or greens in here? So do you see now how segregation and racial isolation comes from the top down, when they keep reinforcing what a black person is supposed to act like, what they're supposed to look like, what they're supposed to talk like, their social preferenses, favorite colors? This is the worst kind of racism. Notice that it has nothing to do with me or you, because we don't write these stories, do we? It's coming from the top down. Now, I doubt that these products are even about black owned. This is probably somebody that thought that they could capitalize on this stuff, because this is what they do. This is what the controllers do. They gain power by doing this. I hope I'm clear about this, because a couple of people of color are still stuck in this right-left racial divide. And we have to free ourselves from this mental prison and realize that, yes, there are individuals out there who have some power that are racist, who touch our daily lives, but that's not the norm. And that the main problem is from the top down, to disrupt the unity in our communities and create chaos to divide America. We need to stop looking at each other and start looking at the people in control, and understand how we're being played by our own government. Because our government has created an identity for black people, hasn't it? And sadly, many of us fall for that identity. That in order to be considered black, you have to support certain groups, you have to dress a certain way, you have to have certain habits. And as this identity is repeated back to us in the media. Now, let's flip the script here, because they do the same thing to white people. Let's talk about that. And this should be the dead giveaway, shouldn't it? This is what should be that opens your minds. Look at what the media did to the Thump crowd. For different reasons, of course, but they did the same thing. They completely profiled white people, didn't they? With the hats, the blanket assumption that all people that support him are racists, and on and on and on. They profiled white people. And this is why even the hats were so destructive. I saw that coming a mile away. I'm like, you really want to don the hat, pun intended. You really want to put that on, because now you have been profiled. And that's exactly what happened. The media went to town. It became an easy target, didn't it? Because all of the ideas that the media had cooked up to attach to that profile were weaponized anytime someone would see the hat, it got to the point where you couldn't even wear the hat to school. They just immediately assumed you were all those things. Remember that? And then look what happened to those people when they would put those hats on. Well, they began to self-fulfill the prophecy, didn't they? They began to fit themselves into that identity because they were fooled, just like people of color are often fooled by this. Now, it's hard to shed away these identities, but at the end of the day, you have to be an individual. Don't be afraid if someone scoffs if you aren't part of a certain political party, or you don't support blam blam, or you don't talk a certain way. You know, I get comments all the time. People say, "Oh, you don't sound like a black person." That's why would someone say that? It doesn't make any sense. What is a black person supposed to sound like? You see, there's Asian Americans. You can't tell they're Asian by the way they talk. Why do we have to fit into this paradigm that's been created for us that is creating the very bondage that we complain about? So, I've shared with you guys my testimony about my life. You know, my mother grew up in the 50s and 60s, and she was around when, you know, people of color couldn't drink out of the same fountains. But yet she rose above it. And she got a job at the state of California. And, you know, she only with an AA degree, she retired several years ago and went very far and was successful according to the world's terms. But she was successful. She was able to raise all of us kids. And I never really saw my mom focus. She did early on, but as she got older, she realized she got a really good shake at life. You know, paid vacations, you know, state car, state vehicle, really fun jobs. And she put in her 25 years, I think it was. And now for the last 10 years, she's just been having fun till Vidco hit and they shut everything down. But wow, who could complain about that? Who could complain about that? Now, on the flip side of that, I've seen from my very same family, the other side of the coin, the people who are not self-empowered. And we're talking this very same family, okay? We're not talking, you know, some person in some other state far, far away, raised in the same situation, the same opportunities, but people who get stuck in this brainwashing and don't try to better themselves and just sit and make excuses about why the world is so unfair and why everything's so racist. When all they have to do, you know, my mom already gave the example. She already lived the example that I followed in certain ways. I didn't go work for the state, but, you know, I didn't have this mentality that everything is holding me back. In terms of race, let's put it that way. There are other things that are holding us all back, but it has nothing to do with race. And when you sprinkle race into that, you sign up for victimhood is what you do. And victimhood is never going to get you anywhere because it's a construct from the top down. It's been created to make you fail, to make you languish in self-pity, to never reach your full potential, to think that, oh, if I can't become a basketball player, then what's my self-worth? Do you see how damaging that is? It's very damaging. So enough of that. Let me make sure we're connected here. And you guys feel free to share your thoughts on this. You know, this is a serious subject because obviously the controllers have a lot of power still in how they can trigger people of color and get them to join groups and things. Now, there is an issue with law enforcement. I agree with that. But look at what's happened. The tides are turning, and most cops aren't like that. Cops are just cops. If you want to know the truth about that, go on to Arkansas, where it's mostly white people, and you'll see the cops and them pulling over other white people and doing the same thing that some people are claiming is done to black people disproportionately. They get shot, they get chased down, they get screwed with, they get their cars searched, and it's white on white. It's just that the media continues to focus on the color disparity, and they do that because they gain power from it. It's like the Joker sitting around the corner, snickering and laughing because we're all fighting with each other about something that is probably about 95% already taken care of. It's not really a problem between people. If they would just stop talking about it from the top down, we could all just get over it and heal from it. Because I think we're in a day and age now where people understand that black people are just as capable as white people. Okay? We've proven it. So people aren't just walking around going, that guy's this because he's that color. So this is meant to be a healing type of conversation. I don't want this to create any more division because that goes against what we're all talking about here. But hopefully if we can all dig deep inside and be honest with ourselves, we can see that there's a way out. Now, I understand certain people grow up in certain areas, but again, that's a money thing. It's not about color. It's about money. And why did we allow those huge buildings to be built with all the low income, disparity in a situation with no jobs? Most people will work regardless of their color if there's a well-paying job nearby and they can, get some kind of training. But when you create these prisons and you put people in there, what do you expect is going to happen? The same thing would happen if they built one of those in a white community. So hopefully things are changing, but we need to have honest conversations like this one to get past it. Let's get into some of these other headlines because this is crazy, you guys. For those of you that have been following the channel on the daily, then we've been talking a lot about mold for about probably a month now. Now, this came up, we were decoding some films in which mold was prominent. And then all of a sudden, lo and behold, this was just a few days ago, all of a sudden there's this debate about mold in the green weed. Should Connecticut change mold and yeast levels in the green weed? Now I'm saying that differently because I don't know how YouTube feels about talking about this subject. But look at this. Now, Connecticut is apparently having this debate about what level of mold and fungus is safe in the greeny weed. And one of you actually sent me this story. Now, I shared with you during past decodes that spiritually, mold seems to be beginning to infect our reality. And that it can also manifest in the physical. And these kind of stories popping up is one example. And we've seen all this programming that suggests that mold is some kind of bioweapon, possibly, that they can deploy through a number of mechanisms. And I don't know what the end result is that they want for this, but it could have something to do with reducing the population or causing misery or enriching the pharmaceutical industrial complex when people need to go in and try to find out what's wrong with them. Some people even believe that cancer is a type of mold. Here's what we do know. Mold happens in the human body when the immune system is suppressed or compromised. This is when it begins to take over. And I can think of a lot of different ways that the controllers are suppressing our immune systems in ways that we can't talk about, but we all know what we're talking about, right? Let's read what they have to say about this debate on mold levels in grainy weed. Now, many of you that are a part of this culture and possibly even grow this, understand that in some climates, you got to get this plant off of the stalk pretty quickly when it starts to mature, because what happens is mold can grow. And I've heard stories of entire crops being lost, or not having enough people to process all of it at one time, and a lot of it needing to be thrown in the trash or burned. We're talking tens of thousands of dollars worth of the greeny weed. So let's read this. It says, as the state considers whether to adjust the required mold and yeast levels in medical greenweed products, patients and others remain concerned about the proposed change and are calling for stricter testing standards. So this is a thing, you guys. The mold is starting to infest the greenweed. The public comment period ended last week on the State Department of Consumer Protection's proposed changes, which would set the total limit at 100,000 colony-forming units per gram and wouldn't allow any detectable levels of harmful breeds of mold in the Aspergillus family. As Connecticut prepares to launch its recreational greenweed program, the change would mean increasing the levels for one lab, while the other facilities would need to lower its amount after gaining state approval last year for more mold and yeast in its products. While the medical and recreational programs have separate sets of regulations, testing standard changes will be reflected in both programs. The proposal came in December after medical greenweed patients complained about the state approving a request for Odysee Labs last year to raise its limits from 10,000 units per gram to 1 million. So this is interesting. They're trying to raise the level of acceptable mold in the greenweed. What does that tell you? It tells you that it's becoming more prevalent. So this is amazing. This is supernatural that God revealed this to us when he did. That this is on the rise. The approval occurred via email and patients weren't notified of the change. Of course not. They don't want to raise any alarms. State officials and Odysee's director have said the Aspergillus requirement makes the product safer. What? The other lab, Northeast Laboratories, left its limit at 10,000 units per gram. Some of Connecticut's 54,000 medical greenweed patients have expressed concerns over transparency and the safety of the products after learning the state approved the change for Odysee Labs. At least 2 medical greenweed patients who submitted public comments said that they have mold allergies. Whoa. Third, who didn't mention an allergy, wrote about getting sick from the products. So people are getting poisoned, basically. This is medicine. It should have strict standards, and companies producing it need to be held to those standards. One comment read, I'm deeply concerned for my health due to the recent update to the mold limits that was behind closed doors. Others expressed concerns about transparency and communication regarding the State Department. I think CT, DCP, and CTMMP really need to improve communication with producers, dispensaries, and patients. One comment read. So, this is interesting. Now, we're going to keep our eyes peeled because I believe that there will be more and more of these types of stories based on our research of mold infesting things. People, homes, plants, medicines, you name it. Now, if you think we're just making all this up, understand that a mold bioweapon was produced way back when, and it was called the yellow rain. It was a mycotoxin, and here it is here. It's called T2 mycotoxin, and this was used in war. Let's look at the history of this. A disease which was caused by the mycotoxin killed thousands of USSR citizens in the Orenburg district in the 1940s. It was reported the mortality rate was 10% of the entire population. Wow. Contaminated food. And I guess this was in World or 1970s. Then, in 1981, United States Secretary of State Alexander Haig and its successor George Shultz accused the Soviet Union of using the same mold mycotoxin as a chemical weapon known as yellow rain in Laos. Now, the Russians fired back and blamed the U.S. of doing the exact same thing. They call this a U.S. chemical weapons expert calls it yellow rain. So this is real, different molds and funguses used as a weapon is a very, very real. There's several other stories here. I'm not going to read through all these. But they're saying here that mycotoxin could also have been the cause of GWS. Another sensitive topic on YouTube. You're not allowed to talk about that. And they rush through and try to erase any comment talking about it. They don't want vets comparing notes, because then that would be, really bad for them. Basically, they're blaming that for it as well. So that's the truth about mold. Now, here we have some news. Now, I'm not going to add too much to this story. We're going to read this because, of course, this is a sensitive topic. But according to the Topeka Capital Journal, after an autopsy, it was confirmed that this Kansas woman died after receiving the SmacksineDeath. So the truth is coming out. Let's read this article. Jeannie Evans died of anaphylaxis due to Vidco SmacksineDeath. According to the autopsy report, she lived in Effingham. She died on March 24th, 2021. Look how long it took for this to come out. Almost an entire year. And she got Modern Nirna in Jefferson County. They did the autopsy report, and it didn't get released till Tuesday, almost a year later. She was 68 years old. She had a history of hypertension, environmental allergies, allergic disorder. Now, think about the policy that was in place at that time. Remember, people were trying to get medical exemptions because they already had a predisposition to anaphylaxis? And remember what they told us? They were denying those medical exemptions, weren't they? They were denying them. And they said the only way you could get out of it through a medical exemption was if you had a bad reaction to the first one, right? That was the only way you could get out of it. Well, by then it could already be too late. Now, she even had experienced a previous anaphylactic reaction to another drug. So, she had stuff going on, and she ended up passing away. Unbelievable. Here's a lady here, left her family. I don't know if she was married, but, this could happen to you. This could happen to anybody. I've had anaphylactic reactions before. I have some weird allergy to I don't know if it's grape juice, but it seems to always happen to me when I drink Welch's grapefruit juice, or grape juice. I'm sorry, not grapefruit, grape juice, or walnuts, raw walnuts. This can happen to me. So a lot of people have this anaphylactic reaction. The problem is that isn't being accounted for. There was no huge push to exempt people who had that. Yeah, they stated that if, there's a possibility you could, but as a blanket policy, it was pretty much everyone had to get it. And the atmosphere was, there are very, 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 very few reasons why a person shouldn't get a SmacksineDeath. That's what we were told. And there was this impression given that even if you had a history of this, you still should try to go get it. And look what happened. Now, there's probably more of these kinds of stories, but you're never going to hear about them. This one happened to slip through the cracks after a year. I'm sure the family knew, but, no one could say anything until they get the autopsy report and until it's confirmed. So, the truth is coming out. Now, what's the idea behind this, that the truth's coming out? Well, this is going to create more chaos, probably. They probably want people to be upset. Look at where this happened. The heartland of America. They want people to be enraged. They want more crapper hole events so they can arrest more people. And, thin the herd, so to speak. Now, this whole Vidco situation has parents enraged across America. Now, parents were already mad this time last year But as we open the show this morning about, race and everything, they had pigeonholed those parents. Remember that? Called them right-wing nuts, Q nuts. Said they were just opposing the masks and the SmacksineDeath just because they were politicizing it. They put all these labels on the parents who tried to oppose all of this, pigeonholed them, and then it was easy fodder for the media to pick them off because the media controls the narrative. This is why you don't join groups. Start joining groups and you get attached, you get associated with that group. Well, people are starting to get it. They're starting to get how we've been played. Parents from both sides are starting to come together against masks and SmacksineDeath. But you don't hear the media focusing on the SmacksineDeath right now, do you? It's all about the masks right now. Even though it's really about both, the media is not covering the SmacksineDeath aspect of it. They're only focused on the masks. Now, why could that be? Well, it's a smokescreen, right? It's a smokescreen to draw the attention toward the masks so they can double down on the SmacksineDeath. Because I don't know if you guys heard, but one of the pharmaceutical companies is trying to basically release a low dose SmacksineDeath for children. So as soon as that comes to market, they'll try to mandate that in the schools as well. So the mainstream media is picking its battles. They're throwing masks under the bus so they can come back stronger with the SmacksineDeath later. I guess we'll have to see. Now, if you want to get some encouragement about what's going on in the schools, watch some of these newer school board meetings. People are really standing up. They're coming together. There's people that used to be Democrat that are now turning Republican. Not that that's the answer, but at least it's a good sign that there's people from both sides coming together compared to this same time last year when they were pigeonholed into one group, right? Now, let's get on to this next story. Now, when I saw this one, I almost peed my pants in laughter because here we are in 2022. Sexual harassment in the Metaverse. Woman alleges she was taken advantage of in the virtual world. Now, try not to laugh as I'm reading the story, but it is kind of funny. Welcome to the machine, right? Where virtual is reality. And somebody can claim or believe that they were abused through a TV screen. Are you serious? I mean, have you even seen the Metaverse? The characters don't even have arms, let alone other body parts that would be necessary for this kind of situation. But this is the world we live in now. I'm going to carefully read this so we can laugh. A woman in the UK wrote a blog post on Medium that she experienced a real horror play out in the virtual game Horizon Worlds, developed by Meta, formerly known as Facebook. Within 60 seconds of joining, she wrote in the post from December, I was verbally and that harassed 3 to 4 male avatars with male voices, essentially, but virtually, gang her avatar. Wow. She details watching her avatar get assaulted by a handful of male avatars who took photos and sent her comments like, don't pretend you didn't love it. The woman is vice president of Metaverse research for Kabuni Ventures, an immersive technology company. Meta released Horizon Worlds to everyone 18 years and older in the US and Canada after an invite-only beta test a year ago. It features thousands of virtual worlds by creators and is free to download for all users, but Meta plans to monetize the game by facilitating e-commerce and advertising. Meta did not immediately respond to requests from the USA Today to comment. Meta envisions a virtual world where digital avatars connect through work, travel, or entertainment. So they're totally trying to sell the platform. So, Nina Jane Patel recounts receiving comments calling it a pathetic cry for attention and urging her not to pick a female avatar next time. Oh my God. Others have raised questions about whether getting hurt in a virtual world is really a concern. In response, Patel cites a peer-reviewed study in 2009 that talks about the Proteus effect, which found that people base their social behavior on attractiveness of their avatar on and offline. Okay. Players who were assigned taller and more attractive avatars tended to perform better in the games and negotiated more aggressively. I think this lady's got too much time on her hands. Wow. Patel points out the metaverse is becoming increasingly immersive, and the bodily harm she experienced in her avatar shocked and offended her. You might want to go to therapy for that. So this article goes on and on. I can't believe they wrote this much in this article about a lady who got attacked in a virtual video game. Wow. All right. Well, let's keep going here. A couple more stories for you guys. What do we have here? Now, something's going on in the wildlife. We talked a little bit about this because it seems as though as we get closer and closer to the end times, there's a pattern that's emerging in the way that some wildlife behaves. There's this aggression. Now, we already know the Bible tells us that animals can also be demon-possessed. Remember, Jesus cast the demons into the 2,000 pigs. And it's not every single animal. It's not all bears or all moose or all alligators that are this vicious. But there's these isolated events of sporadic, like, outbreaks out of character for that particular animal or that breed. And there's videos on YouTube of people that figured out that if you fly a drone up above the surf, that you can see silhouettes of fish. And they were able to witness something very strange when doing that. Because swimming within inches of surfers and boogie boarders and waders were these massive great white sharks that nobody knew was there. Sometimes there were dozens of them. And you have to ask yourself, what if there is some kind of signal or whatever's happening spiritually that could turn these sharks on? Can you imagine the carnage on every single beach? Now, they believe that the reason why these sharks are swimming around but don't attack people is because that's not what normally sharks do. And I guess that might be the case, but they think that only occasionally when they get really, really hungry is when they'll attack somebody alive. Because sharks mostly eat dead things, don't they? But I think there's something else at play here. I think that there's something spiritual at play that's happening. So, you got to ask yourself other questions like, what role do infectious diseases like rabies play in wildlife aggression? Now, this story happened. Giant moose tramples dog sled team in Alaska for almost an hour. Unbelievable. Now, what excuses do the controllers give as to why this is happening? Why animal attacks are on the rise? Well, they say it's because more and more people are living in more and more wild areas. Or they say it's because of global warming and animal migrations into previously uninhabited areas. But I believe that what's really at play here is something spiritual. So this moose went ape and trampled this dog sled team for an hour. Look at these poor dogs under the moose's feet. What possessed this moose to do this? Now, the lady who was riding this dog sled team emptied her gun into this moose, and it still did not stop. A giant bull moose spent an hour trampling a dog sled team in Alaska, even after the owner emptied her gun into the animal. Bridget Watkins and her team of dogs were attacked by the moose last week while on a 52-mile run, leaving 3 dogs needing surgery. This has been the most horrific past 24 hours of my life. As the giant moose charged at her and her team, Watkins shot the animal, but it didn't stop him from stomping on the dogs. I ran for my life and prayed that I was fast enough to not be killed in that moment. After she and a friend trailing her took refuge behind her snowmobile, the moose charged at them and stopped 2 feet in front of the machine. She was able to cut 6 dogs free, but the moose went back over to continue trampling them for nearly an hour. Now, you could say that maybe she had little ones nearby, maybe, and she felt threatened if she thought the dogs could hurt her little ones. That could have been the case. But look at these pictures. The moose stopped like right in front of her. Apparently she was recording all this, and a lot of people have GoPros now and they record everything. But think of the horror. This is a large animal. You can tell the scale of this animal just by looking at these large dogs next to the animal. This thing's got to be over 6 feet high in its height. Because I know if I was standing next to one of these dogs, I would probably only come up to about the shoulders of this moose. But man, the horror of this. So the dogs all survive, but they need surgery. And so that's what's going on with the moose story. Now, those of you that follow the channel, you'll recognize this shape as we get into our next story. This is the torus field. We've seen this shape in countless films, haven't we? It's basically the shape of the magnetic field. And what we've come to understand as also the basic shape of a tree. We have the trunk, the branches, and the roots. And we've also discovered that these trees are really wormholes or frames of reality, dimensions or worlds, and that possibly the tree of the knowledge of good and evil are 2 of these magnetic fields side by side, or maybe even stacked. They probably form the boundaries of our prison reality. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil, the 2 pillars. Now here's an image of Earth cosmology, biblically based, with the ice ring around the edge, the convex lens Earth higher in the middle, in general shape. You know, people talk about it being a plane, and that's true, but there's topography on it. So it's like a tiered cake inside here. Then you have the tree at the top, which is one magnetic field, and the tree below. This would be the stacked model. Now these are ancient images, actually. And this is how they viewed the world, the snow globe world. So what is going on with this? Well, they have a new way to create energy, and that's what this image is. A giant donut-shaped machine delivers a major climate change breakthrough, sustained nuclear fission. Fusion, not fission, fusion. So different technology. And what they're saying was they were able to create boundless power for 5 seconds. And they think that if they can do it for 5 seconds, then they think they can do it forever. And so this is where things are headed with the future of energy. And apparently it doesn't really create much byproducts or waste. So science is using this shape for energy, and it all seems to make sense now, doesn't it? The rush away from fossil fuels, because they already knew that they were going to be able to create this boundless energy. And the plan was given to them by their evil master, of course, the devil himself. Once the grid is 100% electric, there will be no more resistance. Let's read about this. It's the same process that allows the sun and the stars to shine blindingly bright, and if scalable, could mark a serious contender in an energy mix that takes on climate change. Of course, I don't believe in that, but this is what they're saying here. Large donut-shaped machine known as the tokamak, developed by scientists working in the English village of Colham near Oxford, generated a record-breaking 59 megajoules of sustained nuclear fusion energy over 5 seconds during trials in December. This was revealed Wednesday. Doubles the previous record for generating and sustaining fusion. So they're fusing 2 atoms into a larger one, which releases heat and energy. So Here's the history of the creation of nuclear energy. Fusion power started in 1991, then in 97. 2021, they were able to create sustained nuclear fusion, and now they've broken another record. So, see what else is in here. That's pretty much it on that. Now, here's what's clear to me about all this. They want to do away with fossil fuels, and we all know that this is where things are headed. But here's what they're doing now, trying to fearmonger us into not believing in safer fossil fuels, for instance, natural gas. Now, it takes natural gas to make electricity, but they want to consolidate that, and they want control and power over it. Here's what the U.S. Army is doing. They're actually going to have all electric vehicles for I think it says non-combatant vehicles. But this is what's happening next. So this is being adopted. This is going to be the future. Non-combatant vehicles will all be electric by 2035. And development of electric combat vehicles by 2050. Wow. Now, understand that a part of this electrification, if that's a word, is also so that they can remotely control these things as well. In fact, this is RT, and they just uploaded this video. DARPA just successfully had an autonomous Black Hawk helicopter take flight. Let's watch some of this. No pilot, you guys. Welcome to the Terminator scenario. Now, in order for all this to happen, they need electrification as well, right? Maneuvers completely autonomously, monitored by a ground-based crew. So, it's happening. Now, this was a Sikorsky aircraft. I'm literally 4 miles away from the Sikorsky plant on the Housatonic River. And so this stuff is happening. Now let's get into some of these other stories. Now they're saying that your gas stove can kill you. Let the fear-mongering begin. Your gas stove is bad for you and terrible for the environment. Popular mechanics. Now what they say here is that gas stoves can cause asthma. Why weren't they saying this before? And leaks this nitrogen oxide gas that can exacerbate respiratory ailments. So, they're trying to fear us into the electric kingdom. What else do we have here? Now, this story's crazy. Somebody sent this to me. Now, I'd heard about this comedian, Heather McDonald, which just so happens to have Thump's birthday. They both share the same June 14th birthday. But God will not be mocked. And apparently, she was giving a stand-up comedy and started mocking God. What ended up happening was she passed out and cracked her skull. Wow. Now, what could this all mean? I should have probably put the sound on for you guys. Probably shouldn't play it, though, for copyright reasons. But basically, she was saying really mean things about people who got the Smacksine and saying mean things about the Most High and God. Now, what's the difference here? Because a lot of comedians make fun of God, right? I think the difference here is the Smacksine element. There's something different about it that God does not like. Now, the scripture that says God will not be mocked. People go, oh, well, people mock God all the time and nothing happens to them. Well, you might not have to pay the piper now. Might not be tomorrow. Might not be next week. But at some point in your life, if you're mocking God, you're going to pay for that mockery. God's not in a hurry, and actually he has a lot of grace and love, and will give people lots and lots of chances before he enacts his judgment. But make no mistake, he will not be mocked. Now, you can listen to what she said. I'm not going to play it here, but you can listen to what she said and how she goes down. I'll play the part where she goes down because we need to see that. But it happens right after she mocks God. She hits the floor and bounces off the floor. And there she goes. Doesn't that remind you of what happened to Wendy Williams wearing Apollo's costume? The Statue of Liberty. The fall from grace. Right? Guys, these are crazy times. Aren't they? Crazy times. All right, so I think that's about it that I had for you guys today. Let's go back into the chat for a little bit. Appreciate everybody showing up on Friday. And let me zoom you guys up here so I can see your comments. Let that catch up. Now, the whole thumb component to all of this, he was born in a leap, or not born in a leap year, but he became president in a leap year. And in that year was the 166th day of the year that was his birthday. And there's your Apollo number. And it's interesting because leap, like leaping from high places, liberty, it's all starting to kind of come together, isn't it? Exactly how the sticker are falling, says Warriors for Truth. Dr. Chinstrap says, I feel like I woke up in an alternate universe. I know, I feel that way every single day, you guys. Every single day. I know many of you do as well. No, she's not dead. She got a skull fracture. No, ma. Man, we should zoom it up and see if like a piece of lightning came out of heaven or something. Because that's what it looked like happened. If you get a chance, play it back and you'll hear her right after she mocks God. Boom, she goes down. Today feels different. She mocked his name, not his title. So that might have been the difference. Bizarro world. Yes, we should pray for even our enemies. Pray for her. The stars are falling. Yeah. Thanks, Eyes Up. Love you too. Did she have the Pokemon sticker? I'm not sure. She was bragging about, oh yeah, she actually says in the routine that she got both and boosters galore and all this right before she started mocking God. So yes. You know, when you're living in fear of God, it's more like love, right? The other day I said something and I thought about what I said and I repented because I think I remember saying this and I said it live. I said, these revelations come to me in the middle of the night and it can get annoying. And as soon as the words passed my mouth, I repented. So I was like, that's not what I meant to say. That came out wrong. God, forgive me. I never want God to feel as though it's annoying to have these amazing revelations. I was just saying it because sometimes the revelations can become so intense and you have to balance your life. You have to make sure that, you know, that you don't go too far with it because there is such a thing as going too far with it. And that's a form of false idol worship as well. And so I repented of that. But notice that that's what where we're supposed to be. That's where we're supposed to be with all of this. We're supposed to be in this humble attitude toward God. Not that you're walking around afraid to offend him, but you have to respect him. And then you see the opposite of the respect for God. And you see how people just openly mock him at every turn. That's not good, you guys. It's not good. And he will not be mocked. So all right, you guys. Well, I hope you guys have a great weekend. I'm trying to look at the film Transcendence, but I've seen it many times before, but it's been a while. So I'm having a hard time getting through it, but I got it pulled up here. Opening scene, he's putting up copper wire in a gazebo to protect him from signals. Unbelievable. So we're going to look at that, and I'll put together some clips for you guys. I might upload it over the weekend. Transcendence with Johnny Depp. And what else we have going on? Monday, we're going to decode The Outer Limits. There were a couple episodes about infective agents and things like that. So we're going to break that down on Monday. What else was in those Outer Limits episodes? Oh, a guy jumps from a window. He's mind controlled to jump out of a window. So I thought that was significant because we were just talking about that. And Blue Blood, Copper, as they transform this man from a man into an alien to fake an alien invasion at the UN. So we're going to cover all that on Monday. I love you guys. I hope you guys all have a great weekend. Take care and be safe.